We have a really exciting story today. It kind of feels like a little bit of a developing story that's happening in kind of our profession right now. So today we are talking about all about a story about a woman who was claiming to be a dietitian, claiming to be a certified diabetes educator and a nurse. And she was using these titles to be able to, work with clinics, providing education. But the most interesting part of this, and why we're talking about that, is despite somebody who was thought, the public thought was a trusted professional, turned out was not. So after a lot of digging, turns out this person was not who they said they were. So today we are really talking about this because it's really important of how we know how to spot red flags, including people like professionals. Are they who they say they are? So we are going to talk about that. What can you do about it? How do you protect yourself in a lot of, fake, phony people out there nowadays? So I'm joined today with two of our awesome colleagues who have been with us before, funny enough, talking exactly about this same thing in other episodes. But we're so glad to welcome back Laura and Matthew to talk about this. So I think we just jump right in. Welcome, both of you. Matthew, I'm just going to go right to you first because this whole story, when we were talking about do we talk about it or not, feels a little bit unreal. Like it just doesn't feel like it could happen. So maybe do you want to just fill us in on, why we're even talking about this today? Kind of set where this is all coming from.
Yes, so there is a lot to summarize here, but I'll discuss the key points and then link information on the full background. So a couple of weeks ago in early August, the first week of August, I saw a post online of someone wanting to verify the credentials of a dietitian, or who they thought was a dietitian, because a friend had seen them. So this friend was asking their dietitian friend about trying to confirm some credentials. And that friend was not able to find anything that confirmed this person was a dietitian, which was odd. But you don't want to immediately jump to conclusions. So this person and others online did their due diligence. They wanted to make sure, like maybe this is an issue with like name changes, like maiden name changes, moving, some sort of credentials or education done elsewhere, things like that, and not wanting to essentially like falsely accuse someone of something that is quite serious. And in the end, after these attempts at verification, looking at public registries, looking at the Commission on Dietetic Registration, which we'll go into in a moment here as well. After doing all their digging, they found that this person did not have the credentials that they claimed. This person was claiming to be a registered dietitian, but in addition to that, also claiming to be a registered nurse, also claiming to be a diabetes educator, as well as some other more like micro credentials relating to nutrition. And this turned out to not be accurate at all. So this person was posing as multiple registered healthcare professions, not even just one, was charging people for services that they were not legally able to provide. This person had, just false information on their social media platforms, like Instagram, which which after deleting hundreds of posts, they then deleted and then made another one, which again, if you're innocent or not accurately being accused of these things, you wouldn't do. So not only do the like credential searches that didn't turn up anything point in a direction of this not being true information, also the actions afterwards point to that. So this is unfortunately a case of someone using false credentials and claims to do unlicensed medical care, to charge people money for it, potentially also charging under other services as well, and just overall an unfortunate case of seemingly fraudulent activities.
This story is wild. This story kind of, I don't know what it did. Just kind of knocked me off my boots a little bit. But Laura, I'm curious too. Like when you heard about this, when you were kind of seeing this all unfold, yeah, tell me kind of what jumps into your mind first when you hear a story like this.
Yeah, I found it pretty crazy. Usually, when I hear about some blatant examples of like misusing credentials or just outright wrongfully using them, I find about it kind of after the case, like a couple years down the road. It's usually not like in the moment that it's kind of happening. So, yeah, it's just wild to see. And the fact that, I don't know, as we get into it, you might notice like it's kind of very obvious at one point, but at the same time, I feel like they did a really good job at just like, yeah, concealing the fact and using those credentials to their advantage to just gain trust of people online. I think that's a big thing of what we've talked about in some of our other podcasts too about how to spot misinformation and red flags online. We often say a green flag is to look for credentials and to see that somebody is educated or has the license to practice in this area of health that they say they are. Um, but this person was using credentials, as all we could see just like at a glance. They were a registered dietitian, they were a licensed nurse, and all of that good stuff, and a certified diabetes educator. So it takes a little bit extra digging to find some of this stuff, which I just find is so unfortunate that we can't even necessarily really trust credentials anymore if people are lying, right?
Yeah. And I think maybe that flows really nicely into kind of the next piece that we should kind of talk about because, this person was, pretending to use credentials. And that, to your point, Laura, like we're always like, okay, that's the first thing that you check for. And Matthew, you listed a few of the credentials that they were using, but what is the meaning behind these credentials? Like, what is the whole point of having them? Like to you as like a consumer, like why, yeah, why should we even trust that? Is it a big deal if somebody says they're a dietitian when they're not?
The issue with misusing credentials is it's actually a few things. So, yes, the credentials are an aspect showing that you did complete a certain level of education and training to specialize in a particular area in a way that is safe, competent, ethical, and following proper guidelines and clinical practice to do things in the right way, again, in a safe, ethical, educated, informed manner. And it's not just, yeah, these are some letters behind this person's name. It shows that that training went into things. Another thing that comes with credentials, in addition to the standards and the education, is that there's also an aspect of liability. And we've discussed this in other episodes where if you are straying away from those ethical or clinical guidelines, then there are going to be consequences to that. You can lose these credentials, you can lose this licensing if you are practicing in a way that is not appropriate. In addition to that, it is also just a it's just a nice verification for the public to know that you have all of that behind you. There's a greater degree of trust in what you're doing. It doesn't guarantee 100% that the care you'll always receive will be always just amazing or correct or even just like a good fit for you with that clinician, but it does have at least that minimum standard of what is supposed to be being done in that time. Another thing is that it ensures that it tells you the type of training that someone has in a particular area. So, if someone is a particular specialist in an area. So, just to use one of her fake credentials as an example, like the CDE. So, for example, Andrea here is a CDE. So, beyond the regular training of a dietitian, or a nurse or other licensed healthcare professional, Andrea has extra training in diabetes care specifically. So she's able to go that additional level in providing more advanced care for managing diabetes. This this again gives you that certainty of not just having that first registration as a dietitian, but also that extra level of clinical um, ability and knowledge in that additional field specifically. So these credentials again, let you know that what you're receiving from this person is up to a certain standard, knowing that they need to follow certain guidelines, they need to follow certain standards, and gives you that extra assurance that what is being done is correct and proper and appropriate in several different ways.
I'm going to get Laura. I'm going to pass this over to you to explain this too, and then I can chime in from the diabetes component. But I think when we think training, nowadays, like people, oh, like it must have just been a nutrition course, right? Because that's what you kind of hear, like, oh, I just did a weekend away retreat and got all my nutrition. Now I can totally guide everybody. But the credentials behind a dietitian, I think people don't fully understand what it means to even just get that one. So, Laura, do you want to kind of explain even just how to get that one?
I feel like every time I tell um, people what it takes to become a dietitian, they're all like, "Oh my gosh!" Or like somebody asked me if they're considering becoming a dietitian, they're like, "Oh my god, I thought it would be maybe like a year-long certification course." So it's a lot, in my opinion. But what it takes to become a dietitian, at least here in Canada, you need to complete a certain like pre-professional year for certain undergraduate degree courses, kind of get your like basic sciences in and things like that. And then you apply to a bachelor's science in nutrition and food science, which is a 4-year kind of undergraduate degree, particularly in the dietetics specialization. So that's what I did. That's what we all did, unless things have changed depending on the years that we completed it. But yeah, what that entails is, yeah, 4 years undergrad in nutrition sciences, learning about different chronic diseases, learning about the evidence and really actually gaining that knowledge of how to assess the evidence, scientific literature, research, all of that good stuff, so that we can continue competency. And then in the final year, it's a internship where you're working in hospitals providing nutrition care. You're working in different aspects like food service, community nutrition, to get a really well-rounded idea of the nutrition issues in these different settings and how to appropriately provide care and improve outcomes there, right? And that internship, correct me if I'm wrong, 1900 hours internship. I think it varies depending on university, but I didn't find it short. I found it to be a lot. So that just goes into how I think us as dietitians, it can be super frustrating to see somebody misuse the title of registered dietitian because there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's a little bit of an aspect of just, yeah, wanting to use that correctly and be able to highlight how much education we do get on that to be able to provide care to people, right?
And then after all of that is done, there are also continuing requirements once you're registered. So there are continuing education requirements where you need to demonstrate that you are each year engaging in activities that help to improve your competence, improve your skill development in new areas, ensuring that you're keeping up with more recent knowledge or research or trends in your industry, and just ensuring that you're developing your skills over time. I should also add that in the United States, where this took place slash is taking place, they have moved to a master's requirement for dietitians as well. So even further additional training beyond that as well, compared to what we still have in Canada, which is still a high standard, but that has even further increased in the United States.
I guess final piece to even add on that I didn't mention is you have to pass the registration exam to be you actually use the registered dietitian title. So once you complete all the schooling, you can consider yourself, I think, a temporary dietitian or dietitian, but you can't use the registered dietitian title until you actually pass that exam.
And you're also paying a lot every year to maintain that registration as well.
True.
So you are 100% right, Laura, of like when somebody just is like, oh, I'll just go take a weekend course of actually how long of a process it is, just to keep that up, just to maintain it yearly for sure. And then the other piece around a CDE, so that's the Certified Diabetes Educator component, is you have to be able to prove that you could do at least even 800 hours of diabetes practice or experience or being mentored under to even meet the criteria to write an exam to hold that as well. And that's another one of these credentials that requires upkeep, that requires liability, that requires, follow through every 5 years. Do I still meet these standards? Am I still able to keep that? So, we think, oh, they're just letters behind our name, but they're not. They're a lot of work and upkeep. I think that's what shock if somebody would misuse that in these situations. I think is what like shocks and hurts at the same time. It's a little bit of both. So let's move into this next piece, I guess. And so we know the credentials, we know we got to keep them up. Obviously, this person was misusing them, but I guess what is the harm? Like, what is the harm to somebody, the potential person who is seeking the support, or yeah, like what could potentially be the harm?
There are a lot of potential harmful aspects. We'll speak generally and then some things more specific to this case. So, first is just chronologically, let's say someone is looking for a healthcare professional to work with and they see those letters. This person is now, under false pretenses, having more trust in this individual. And you may think, yeah, maybe the letters themselves don't matter, but if they didn't, no one would be doing this. She wouldn't be faking credentials if they didn't matter, and she didn't recognize that they do matter to people, knowing that there is some level or some standard of care or knowledge that that person's going to have. But beyond that, once we actually begin, let's say, you're working with a patient or a client, if you didn't actually demonstrate those skills, more so in the like internship part that Laura was talking about. So there is that theoretical education that's more like in the classroom. There's the skill-based competency that's done in the placements, and then there's applying that on those registration exams as well. If you didn't demonstrate any of that, then we don't actually have any idea what a person's level of knowledge or skill is in their field of work that they're claiming to be in. So this person could be practicing without a minimum standard of competence, which needs to be demonstrated, without a minimum level of knowledge, which needs to be demonstrated, and can be doing things that then do not match what is appropriate for different medical conditions. So they're providing medical nutritional therapy. They are treating medical problems with knowledge that they don't have, skills that they don't have, potentially just like guessing things, searching things, applying information potentially inappropriately. And this can have dangerous consequences. Some of it can maybe be more minor, some of it may be more major, depending on what this person is treating without their training. And if we go into some of the examples of areas that Trina is claiming to be an expert in, then we can talk about specific ways that unlicensed practice in these areas specifically can be harmful. So, looking at her social media information, we did discuss the CDE aspect. So, in the US, this is actually CDCES. So, she's faking the wrong credential for the United States, which is interesting. But for diabetes educators, like we said, there's that additional standard that we are expecting in their knowledge and skills when it comes to diabetes management. And based on some of her social media content, it seems that she's actually veering into this in a way that is very inappropriate. We'll link to this or show an image. But we did find some of her services relate to things like titrating diabetes medications, which is wild. You're not a registered healthcare professional at all, let alone a diabetes educator, and you're trying to provide people guidance on medications. Myself and Laura, like as registered dietitians, but not diabetes educators, would not do that. Even though we do have some level of education and knowledge in treating and managing diabetes, more so through diet, that's still a crazy thing to do and extremely inappropriate. And doing so without even that level of education is potentially dangerous, is inappropriate. You are, yeah, you're messing with people's medications without the knowledge to do so. She has other posts that are also talking about like why people shouldn't take certain medications. Again, very inappropriate, and again, potentially harmful there. So there's that aspect of you're providing care that does not have the proper um, improperly in that, which can be very dangerous. Other harms that can come with this. So, like I said, there's the trust in initially seeing someone with that. There's potentially receiving incorrect guidance or information. There are the financial losses. If you are paying money for medical services that are not appropriate or not by a licensed person, then or not proper, then that can be a waste of your money. You may have insurance reimbursement issues if this person is not in proper licensing, and then you can't actually be reimbursed for the services you received. So there's the financial aspect there. There's also, if we look at some of her other areas of treatment here, some of it is different to women's health issues. Some of it is reproductive care and like cycling, which again, if we're doing that improperly, with some of the services she's providing, can result in like unplanned pregnancies, which also can have a lot of unintended outcomes there. She's offering a lot of lab testing as well. In the area of lab testing, this can lead to, in instances, like a false sense of not just security, but a false sense of finding answers for things that may or may not actually be there, when she's ordering things and then potentially interpreting them also without education. That's another aspect of potential harm specific to this. Working with athletes, one here is another aspect here where someone may be looking for more optimal performance with suggestions, but if they're again not coming from a place that is well informed or educated, can lead in not the outcomes that are desired there. She appears to have been treating a lot of gastrointestinal health issues, which again, mistakes there can lead to worsening of symptoms or a lot of discomfort, or essentially the opposite outcome of what we're looking for, and can also lead us into a direction that is counterproductive to what our goals are, which is, again, the opposite outcome that people are looking for. They're investing their time into it, they're investing money into it. Some people, like I said, may incorrectly then feel that I finally found answers to maybe these long-term problems I've had. And then this is finally the answer. I found the person who's finally empathetic towards these issues, who finally understands me, who finally has these answers. And then that is someone who has had these repeated instances of mistrust may then have fallen down that again, in this case with someone who's not even licensed in the first place. And one more thing relating to, again, that false sense of finding that right person, she also has fake testimonials on her website that we'll potentially go over in a little bit, using just images of like stock image models and just like a random woman up from Depop that we'll potentially go over. Long way to say that there are many, many different harms that can come from this, including financial losses, worsening health or worsening treatment of the conditions we're trying to treat, inappropriate medication titrations that she's not qualified to do, and many other things.
That's a lot of harm. That's a huge list, Matthew, that you just put out for harm. And I was trying to think, like, is there anything that you didn't cover? And the other one that makes me cringe a little bit of harm of, part of being part of a regulatory body also means that we know how to we know how to use information and data and store it properly, hang on to it properly, how to use it, when to report, when to not. And with that trust that you were talking about also means that those people would have haven't had to have given some form of medical information, some form of medical number to be able to order lab tests. Where was that person holding it? So I think about from the data confidentiality piece too of potential harm. Like we look at scammers, with credit cards and things like that. Like data information, your health, personal information is like one of our top things that we're always trying to protect. So an unregulated person, that makes me very nervous. So that was another thing. I'm like, oh, there's got to be a little bit more harm. Laura, any other ones that we missed?
So many. I mean, Well, it's not that we miss. There's just so many in general, but I'm also just thinking like if you are able to claim this through benefits or insurance, there's insurance fraud going on there. So that's a whole other harm that can impact so many people that you probably don't want to get mixed up in. I don't imagine anybody would. And then, yeah, just kind of expanding that onto the fact that even giving them major benefit of the doubt if they have any knowledge in health, nutrition, certain conditions. Have they gained that knowledge or that practice in being able to keep up with the evidence? Like maybe they were right 20 years ago on some recommendations, but there's nothing regulating them to say that they are keeping up with things that change. And in the areas that they are practicing in, like PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, gut health issues, irritable bowel syndrome, all of this good stuff. It's very early in the research, and there's lots of development, even just like month by month, as to what the best practice guidelines are for these conditions. So, yeah, I don't have faith that they would be keeping up with that. But there's nobody who can say so because they don't have any regulation.
Right. And especially in so many different like subspecialties at once, keeping up with all of that at the same time would be quite challenging, which is another piece there. Um, and like you said, even if some of the information, or maybe a lot of it, is more, let's say, mostly correct or general enough that it's not particularly harmful, I did see some examples where there are things that specific things that could be like I mentioned, the medication changes, or this one that says PPIs and acid blockers are a scam, which is interesting because there are ways through food to manage things like acid reflux, which she refers to as acid reflex on one of her posts. But there are also people where things like that can you may need the medication to avoid things like Barrett's esophagus, which in itself is like a precancerous stage that can become very, very dangerous if it proceeds to esophageal cancer, which is very deadly. So, just an example like that, where um, she's giving that information specifically regarding medications, which is more of an individualized type of discussion to have with one's healthcare team, like their doctor, and seeing what benefit they are getting from other means to see if those medications are needed or depending what their risk is and things like that. There's also an aspect of like, and this is not specific to her, but this aspect of like, I've got this different edgy thing that these doctors don't want you to know, or that's natural, or that's different, just being unique in some way, when sometimes there are reasons why a lot of people follow clinical guidelines for a specific thing. It might just be correct, not just that it's we're all together in on this conspiracy and this scam to keep you sick and stuff. Sometimes clinical guidelines just make sense because that's what research is at that time, and it can evolve over time. But trying to, yeah, again, be this like anti-establishment type of figure is another piece that's has some aspects here and is a common thing in this type of stuff online.
That you know what's we did another podcast of there, so we'll make sure to link that to of I think we spoke about all of those things of like, I promise we're not hiding things, and if somebody's like, your dietitian is holding this from you, and I'm sure, Laura, like that's a red flag. Like if somebody's like, oh, I've got the secret because they're not telling you something, is such a hook that's gonna drag you in. So we'll have to link that podcast too, because that's a whole other component on top of this, which again makes this story just crazy. I feel like with all this harm as a consumer looking for healthcare professionals, like how do we what can we do to spot these people? Like, let's say, we do have that trust and we're going to our site and it says dietitian. Like, what is something really easy that our listeners could do just to fact check that? Like, what's a easy way to do that?
You can look up their credentials, see if they are registered, in fact, with the regulatory body that they say that they are. So, I mean, in Canada, you can go to the specific province that a dietitian is registered in. For us in Alberta here, it's the College of Dietitians of Alberta. And you can actually search up a dietitian's name and see if they're registered. Um, I mean, again, there's always some of these things where we don't want to assume the worst right off the bat. People can go through name changes. So if you don't see their name right off the bat, it's worth sending an email over and things like that if you have further questions to the college, which they do provide contact information there. Um, or even like Dietitians of Canada, they have a page where you can look up dietitians that are practicing in your area too. That one's a little bit less looking up their specific registration numbers, if I'm not correct, but at least gives you some guidance to be able to look up, okay, where are the dietitians at kind of in my area, right?
And for those who are watching this who are American, where Trina is, in the US, you have the Commission on Dietetic Registration, which is a way you can nationally look people up in different states. This can be based on, like here, it can be based on name or it can be based on registration number. So someone should be able to provide, well, yeah, hopefully their name is what they're telling you is correct, but you can use their name or you can use a number that they provide you to verify these credentials.
And I think, I think we should tell people who are listening, like, it's okay to double check. Like, that's a good just practice of your own due diligence, right? Like, just doing that really quick check. And then if something doesn't look right, and I feel like this is a piece that we forget of, like, it's okay to do the follow up of it. Hey, you know what? Just double checking, just sending a quick email to confirm. Or if something doesn't feel right, you kind of have this like, something felt very bizarre about that situation or about my experience as a dietitian, even if they're a registered dietitian, like even if they're actually on that list. I always tell my clients, like, you should reach out. Like that's what your regulatory body is for. That holds that person very accountable to that experience and warrants a follow up. Like I'm a big believer in that. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it's just great due diligence all around.
I think it's completely reasonable to want to do those verifications. It's not like I distrust this individual in particular and I am suspicious of them. It's you're working with a new person who you've literally never met before. You're not obligated to trust everything that they by default say or that no, that they are registered. In the case of Trina, it seems like she was employed by people who themselves did not do proper verification. So even just because someone works for what seems to be a reputable institution, it doesn't mean that there weren't mistakes made there and that everything's above board. It's fine to ask and to want to verify these things. And I think that another good sign is, or a telltale sign, is how someone responds to being asked for some of these things. Like if someone wants my licensing number, I'll just give it to them. It's not a big deal. It's I want you to be getting the care that you need and verifying things along the way. That's a good thing. And if someone responds by hypothetically, let's say blocking you on Instagram or deleting social media posts, a couple hundred that mention the credentials that they said they had, then that's probably quite the red flag, hypothetically, of course.
Little bit of a red flag. Yeah, no, I think it's good to practice just that diligence at all times, right? Like as much as these credentials and our education that we're proud of says that we are knowledgeable in a certain area. There's there can be bad actors or there can be people that are out of practice and just yeah, like not always the right fit for you, right? So it's not the end all be all. Even if we do hold these credentials, you want to make sure that you have the right fit for yourself too.
And I also think, and I'm gonna get, I think it was Laura, you said you had experience, or and Matthew, like you've done it yourself, like as a professional. That's also a piece that we can do diligence on. If if we get wind of something, yeah, totally. Like we're also trying to hold up that piece for our profession. And it sounds like both of you have done it before.
Yes, it could be some people misusing. I mean, in Alberta, nutritionist is also a protected title, so you have to be a registered dietitian to call yourself a nutritionist, and that's not the case everywhere or in a lot of our provinces, and I'm not sure about the U.S. either. but I've seen a lot of individuals in Alberta who have used the nutritionist title incorrectly. So that's something that I will report for sure. And I mean, it's not even really that much of a deal. Like you just need to take this off and stop misrepresenting. Um, yeah, your knowledge base essentially. So it's good to keep up with, and it's just and all be all that this is a regulatory body, and the people that are members of the practice and the regulatory body also have a little bit of that um, responsibility to make sure that yeah, we're using those titles correctly to contribute to that. So yes, I will report people.
And one additional thing there is to just be sure and confirm what someone's claimed credentials mean in the area that you live in. Because, like Laura said, even in Canada, nationally, nutritionist in some provinces is means that someone is a registered dietitian. In other provinces, it is not a meaningful term with a specific definition, and that can be different based on where you live. So it's important to know what the claimed title actually means. What is the level of education and training behind that? What is the level of liability behind that? What are the standards behind that, specifically where you live?
That's a good reminder. And it's also too of like it can be a little bit confusing. So, just don't look once and then go, oh, like this doesn't make any sense. Just be like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Regulatory bodies are pretty good at trying to direct you to the right place, or at least can help field that for you. Because yeah, even the different things across the provinces. And also note, I guess we'll just add one more little piece too, is dietitians can, especially in Canada, can hold different provincial credentials. Like they can be registered in one province as well as the other, which means they've got different practicing abilities in different provinces too. So um, I think the big takeaway is like, yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to send an email, pick up the phone to the regulatory body that you're just checking. Because it's not a distrust. It's just, hey, I'm going to do a due diligence before I give this person all my information and put my health in trust with that person. Yeah, because it's a big privilege for a dietitian or whoever to get that information from you. It is a big deal.
You're not going to get someone in trouble for verifying credentials that they actually have, so it's fine.
No. Okay. So with all of this story, obviously we know there's still things to weed through. We got some red flags to kind of watch for. Any things as we kind of close here today that we think consumers should know or the public should know when they either hear stories about like this or yeah, anything else that would be helpful for them to know.
One last set of red flags I'd say is just inconsistent claims or information on either different platforms or a timeline on different platforms that doesn't really match. That was something that we saw here about inconsistencies about when this person supposedly first became a registered dietitian or CDE. So if there are inconsistencies, then that is something else to watch out for. The story should match on different places and should match what they say verbally. Slight inconsistencies by like months can really just be a time kind of thing. But if someone who, in this case, supposedly was practicing for a few years is getting things off also by a few years, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, maybe on the same topic too, but Matthew, do you know what they're referring to themselves as now? I think I saw they call themselves something like a functional wellness coach or something like that.
So another thing that was mentioned was, if you reach out to someone about what seems to be inconsistencies or inaccuracies, and then they suddenly change those uh, credentials or things listed on their accounts, that's a big warning. But the specific changes here, so her change on her national provider identifier information on the U on in the U.S. It originally said that she was a registered dietitian, and now it says that she is a health coach or health and wellness coach and FCP, which I'm not exactly sure what that is. Probably functional something practitioner. And on that page for the lookup in the US, again, there's the NPI profile. This is mostly used for things like Medicare and Medicaid services to identify professionals in certain professions. This is not, I should note, this is not identity verification in the US. This is something that you apply for. They do not do the credential verification. Would be the other regulatory bodies we mentioned. But if you go on hers, you'll see that she edited it about a couple weeks ago and changed it from saying she was a registered dietitian to a health and wellness coach and FCP. So again, if someone suddenly changes accounts or suddenly deletes accounts or deletes 200 posts on Instagram after people question their credentials and then deletes the account, that is several massive red flags.
What I was seeing too, I don't know if it's easy for if it's easy if it is easy for people to see or not, but when you see a switch from something like registered dietitian to whatever it is that they switched it over to, um, maybe a quick Google even might even be helpful. Say, is this a regulated term? You can usually kind of figure it out, but also ask us if you would like for sure. But yeah, it's good to see what they might have.
As I'm gonna try to like, oh, gotta give people the benefit of the doubt, but it gets really hard when we're in this kind of situation. However, also know though, when people say they want to retire or say they don't want to actually be a dietitian anymore, or maybe they're actually taking a break, maybe they're doing something different, you still have to go through your regulatory body to kind of put that there of, you know what, I'm actually no longer practicing. Or, you know what, this person actually is on an educational leave. They're, not actively able to practice. So it's kind of like putting that license in the proper piece. So if so not in this situation. However, if there's a situation where like somebody all of a sudden does change their designation, it's something you could go to the regulatory body and be like, hey, you know what, they were a dietitian, but actually now they're not. And then they would be able to tell you, oh, like this person actually is retired from that and they've let their license go, which is very similar also to nursing. Like you would need to let your license go depending on where you're at. It's a form, it's a process to let it go. And then somebody over exterior, like say they let it go, then they would actually have to reapply again through a whole new process just to re-get it again. So don't be afraid to ask questions, I think. And yeah, probably the regulatory bodies don't happen really quickly where like one day you'd be a dietitian and the next you'd all of a sudden be some health coach with some other acronym. Doesn't usually work like that. So that for sure is a red flag, I would say. Okay. We have we I just yeah, I'm still the story still boggles my mind. It's obviously still up and going. So we're going to make sure we also include some links to some other podcasts where we dig into some of these topics a lot more. We'll make sure to link that, as well as a few blogs that we've written on how to spot that. So I thank both of you for joining us today. This is yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Kind of if anybody else watched our listened to our podcast Apple Cider Vinegar, like this is like another example of this in a kind of a different way. So if you liked this craziness, head on over and give that one a check too. But if you like this, please share. We also love to hear from you, kind of up and coming topics that you'd like to hear us chat about. So please leave comments, please share. And yeah, otherwise we will sign off until next time. But it was a pleasure having both of you on today.